Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. Today it's all about Sky Sports Fantasy Football. £50,000 up for grabs for the winner. Will we win? Who knows? More specifically, it is about the overhaul, the enforced wildcard for those who are used to FPL and not Sky. The enforced wildcard, all Sky managers can play before game week 5. My name is Joe and joining me is Luke. Luke, how are you?
I'm really good. I love this. It's like Christmas for me. It's like my favourite part of like tinkering and finding out which teams you can make and who you're going to sacrifice. And it's tough. There's a lot of good options out there so far. It seems anyway.
There is.
Yeah.
And also we went through this 4 weeks ago, obviously, when the games launched, but we had no information to go with. We've now got 4 game weeks worth of information to go with. Still lots of unanswered questions, but a hell of a lot of very viable contenders for our team have emerged, which is great. So as I said, it's overall preparation time. Before we dive straight in, looking at our drafts, what we're going to do is have a look and see who the top scoring players are, and also to see if there's any sort of emerging trends in the bonus point tiers as well. So these are the top scorers so far, and I've got a picture of Kane and Son in there as well, just to show how amazing they're doing at the moment. So Kane, 11.7, 50 points. I mean, this is the Kane legend that we know so well in Sky. Make or break your season. He is the mini league winner or loser for you. If you have him and you can captain him, you can be getting some mega scores. And I've already got some this season from him. So he's in my team. Son though, 49, just 1 point behind, 10.1. And then you've got Calvert-Lewin, Salah you expect there. Calvert-Lewin doing really well at 9.3. Salah is next. Then Vardy with his penalties. Rodriguez emerging as a gem there, 8.8 in midfield. Grealish, in part after their surprise hammering of Liverpool, 38 points, but 8.5. That's very kindly priced actually for Grealish if he's going to offer those sort of returns again. And up front, we decided to get some strikers here. So we've got Callum Wilson, we've got Mbappe from Brighton. These are really good options, 8.5 and 9.5-ish. And then Antonio there, we highlighted him in our Game Week 1. I think he was in your Game Week 1 side, he's certainly in mine. He's staying. He is locked in, 8 million, midfielder, playing as a striker, and he's scoring in tough fixtures. That is an absolute dream for Sky. 8 million.
Yeah. Out of all the options I'm picking, I think Antonio is one of the very few players who is an absolute lock. I'm not open to debate on him, I'm afraid.
No, I'm not at all. No, he's just in.
Exactly.
He's just in. Because also in that price range, well, we're going to come to some of the other contenders in that 8 million, 9 million midfield price range. The fact he's 8 million, I mean, sometimes it feels a bit arbitrary sometimes, the Sky pricing. I mean, I remember you saying at the start of the season with the Chelsea mids coming in, it was almost as if they were just each one that came in, irrespective of talent or points prospects, they were just adding about 500,000 each time. So you got Pulisic, and he goes up and up the scale. But somehow Antonio, they decided 8 million instead of 9 million. To be honest, I would have got him at 9 million. So
we just talked about Morpie at 8.5 million right now. I think he's a really, really good pick at that price. Really good value. I mean, he's on penalties, takes shots a lot, so gets shots on target. 8.5 million, you could argue would outscore virtually any midfielder the same price or below over the course of the season. His main issue is obviously starting games in the past, seems to be over that.
Yeah.
And then you think, well, I can pay 0.5 less and get a player who is equally as good, if not better, and he's in midfield, so he gets extra points for what he does. It's just madness to me, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, there's a really kindly price there. Calvert, now, you can see some of the decisions that are going to be made, and we've got some questions on them. Kane and Son, do you go for both? Do you go for one? And if you go for one, do you make that massive saving to get Son in over Kane, or do you? And then that runs a risk. We know what Kane can do in this game with all those shots. Then you've got that other issue, Rodriguez or Calvert-Lewin. Once again, there's a 500,000 difference there. That could go a long way. Which one do you go for, or do you go for both? And then you've got Grealish, and as we'll talk about, Martinez is looking like a really viable, strong very template goalkeeper pick at the moment. Set and forget, bung him in, could do well all season with save points. Then do we need Grealish? There's those decisions there. But as you said, looking at Antonio, there's no decision. It's just put him in your team. That's it. Just Antonio, 10 other blokes.
I feel like injury will be the thing that is the only thing that will end up removing him from our team, because he's got a history of that, hasn't he? And that's a bit of a worry. But because, like you've already said, there's a lot of players around that kind of price that you can move to. I mean, Harvey Barnes is 8.2 million, for example. I really like him as well. So, and then obviously we can always go defence in Sky. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. We can switch to a defender instead.
And that's a good price. There's a hell of a lot. The Southampton defenders immediately spring out. I don't have a Southampton defender at the moment, but Bertrand has been doing me proud in my pre-overhaul sides, and I'd quite happily go back to him, save a bit of money. Bowen as well at West Ham. If Antonio's out and you're really desperate and they've got great fixtures for a number of weeks, as I think is going to come up soon, just get Bowen in.
I feel really sorry for Bowen, actually, because he's been fantastic, and in any other conditions I would definitely consider him. I'd love him as a player. So direct. Obviously he's got end product all over the place, but when Antonio's 0.1 more, it's just tricky to do that, isn't it? I mean, you could arguably go for both, but having double West Ham, I mean, West Ham could just suddenly revert to type rather than being fantastic like they are at the moment. So
yeah, definitely in Sky I think it's Antonio. Or if he, as you said, if he's injured elsewhere, I've pulled out some bonus stats to look at, and it's just some names really, just who are getting the passing tier 2 for some of these and for some of these criteria. And I'll start with man of the match really, and what immediately springs out is that Antonio and James Rodriguez have 2 man of the match awards. We've only had 4 games. So if they're getting man of the match in 50% of their games, that's obviously going to revert to the mean. But if they're getting man of the match in a third of their games, I'm happy. Especially
indeed.
They're both captaincy contenders as well. I believe you captained Antonio over the weekend.
I did. Unfortunately, that was B team again. Basically, I've had a trend where my A team players have done really, really well, but I've missed the captain nearly every single week. So, for example, Kane, who's the top scorer in the game, I think he scored 2 points in his first game, and he's absolutely gone mental in the other 3. Of course, I captained him in the first game where he got 2 points and haven't in the others. But my B team has been completely different. I've kind of gone different with the picks, a little bit wild, and generally they haven't ticked over with points. However, I've hit nearly every single captain in that, so they're actually only about 20 points apart. So, I mean, I had Antonio captain, for example. I've had Mane captain when he went off when everyone had Salah and he scored 2 goals. Mane scored 2 goals, was it? And stuff like that. Sterling captain over De Bruyne. Loads of really good captains, to be honest. But yeah, the rest of the team letting it down. So I always wonder, if you could combine the 2, suddenly I'd be sat in the top 100 right now. But it never works out.
Yeah, that's the way I've got it as well. My A team, I've actually done all right with Kane on the captaincy front. But it's top 10,000 at the moment, means nothing at this stage, and it's only about 25 points ahead of my B team, which is about 20,000 or so. So it's just a question of marrying up those 2 different types of decisions. But yeah, Antonio and James Rodriguez, they look great for man of the match. Passing,
and I just wanted to say on that Antonio one actually as well. I don't think he's actually been man of the match. Probably, I think he got lucky on one of them for sure. And that's a good sign to me. I mean, he was a favourite last season as well, and he just seems to have this knack of picking it up. I mean, the way Bowen's been playing, as I already touched on, he probably should have got man of the match in a few of them. There's been a lot of good players they've had. Masoko's been playing well, lots of them, but he's got it 2 out of 4 times. Yeah, Cresswell, fantastic. And I think that's a good sign for him, because obviously if he's not even playing as well as he can do, and he's getting it, then great. I mean, James Rodriguez is the very epitome of inconsistency almost. It's like 2 games where he's not really done too much, and he's got 2 pointers, and then 2 games where he's gone absolutely wild and obviously got the man of the match.
Which makes him a tricky captaincy pick, but it's real risk and reward. You can, I mean, I've captained him in my B team where I've got him in a couple of times, and I've hit it once, didn't the other, but that's he is a really good option there. Looking at some of the other tier 2 ones, so these are the ones that we've got. There's quite a few, obviously, again, passing, tackling, saves, shots, tier 1, but tier 2 are the ones that are really doing well. So these are the ones we want to keep our eye on. Passing tier 2, Van Dijk, as you would expect. Gabriel, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Gabriel at Arsenal. Not sure at all. Tom Kearney on passing 3.
Yeah.
He is hit. So Van Dijk, Gabriel, and Tom Kearney have hit passing tier 3 times.
If you remember our very, very first pod this season, I did mention that Tom Kearney was good for passing when he came up last time and got the bonus. Not quite as good as this. This seems to be on a souped-up level.
Now, he's not in my overhaul side, but if we get a Monday night game coming up, in the next few weeks, and it's Fulham against, I don't know. I'm just picking it out, West Brom or something like, just it's one of those nothing key games. Fulham against Burnley.
Burnley are the go-to in that situation. Yeah. Joe always mentioned Burnley in that situation.
Fulham against Burnley. There we go. Tom Kearney could be an option. Robertson on 2, and this is why Robertson is in many sides, as we shall see. Robertson on passing tier 2, he's hit that twice. Tackles. Now this is where Leeds really come in. And Crystal Palace, tackle tier 2, Ayling and Dallas. Now Dallas is cheaper than Ayling, so for me Dallas is the one there. And also shots tier 2, Dallas on 1 for them, so he's hit that one. So this all round just turning up type of points, this is what you want. So aside from goals, clean sheets and assists. But there's more tackles here too. So O'Shea, Mitchell, MacArthur, and Phillips. So it's the rubbish sides. As you would imagine, they're going to do a lot of tackling because they're the rubbish sides against better sides. So how are they going to stop them? They're going to tackle them, and if they're good at tackling, they're going to get recognised. And if they're not, then they're just going to get red cards and they're going to pull skulls or something. So looking at those tackles, there are cheap options there. There are definitely cheap options, but
I think Dallas is at 6.4 million should be the mainstay of virtually everyone's team. He's the no-brainer enabler that everyone's looking at, and I can see why. I mean, we've not even seen Leeds' clean sheet potential yet, which is sort of quite hyped up. I know obviously it's a different ball game being in the Premier League, but I wouldn't be surprised come the end. I know their defence they are very gung ho, but we've seen it before that other teams can be gung ho, and as a result, obviously attack is the best form of defence. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with close to 10 clean sheets come the end. So I'll take that all day. Yeah,
definitely. Moving on to goalkeepers, saves tier 2. Johnston, West Brom, you'd imagine, make a lot of saves. Martinez, Darlow at Newcastle is someone I am actually considering in my B team. No one's going to pick Darlow. But Newcastle goalkeepers have traditionally been quite good in Sky. A lot of saves. Guita and Patricio amongst those others that have got the saves tier 2. All under consideration for me. All of them, really. What's quite handy with Guita and arguably Patricio now is I'm not sure I want any of their outfield players. So if they are having that tricky Monday night single fixture, which indeed Wolves have got coming up soon, Patricio could be the one. Could be good. And the same, I would think the same with Darlow. He fits into that category. I'm not sure there are Callum Wilson, but I don't think I'm ever going to find space for Callum Wilson.
This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, we always preach that you want to have the very best captain you possibly can on every day, and that's great. But somewhere along the line, unless you are going to burn through all your transfers come January, you need to make a sacrifice here or there. And exactly that. If Wolves have a game at the moment, at least, where they don't look like they're on fire, and I think this week is perfect, really, because they're away to Leeds. So it's like, historically, I'd have said Jimenez all day, and he could very well still be the best captain here. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you gave me a choice of any player, I'd probably pick him. But when you've got a player like Dallas or something like that who's playing so well, and you can put the armband on, there's a good chance he could not only match him, but possibly beat him. So is it worth the swap later on? And this is always the debate we have in Sky, isn't it? So the players and names you've mentioned there, they can do a job of covering in some cases. And Patricio for Wolves is a good example, I think, because he's just a good keeper, isn't he? He can get a clean sheet any game. He can get save points. I know they haven't looked themselves at the moment, Wolves, so there is a worry, but the games are so good. And I don't know how you feel, Joe, but I feel like surely they will click into some sort of gear at some point.
I was watching, I know you appeared on Mark and Az's FPL Black Box show a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was watching a bit of their show last night. There was it's very interesting reasoning about sort of that theme of reverting to the mean. And I think it was 1963 was when the last weekend's crazy results were matched. I mean, you're talking some really insane scores.
Right.
And that level of goals from teams that really shouldn't be scoring that level of goals. Liverpool should not be beaten by that scale by Villa. Spurs, okay, they should be maybe 3-3 you're looking at, but they're not going to be hammer Manchester United. And Wolves indeed as well. They're not going to get hammered by the likes of West Ham every time. So I think there will be some reverting to the mean, and that's when we'll start seeing Jimenez getting his traditional 9 points or so.
Well, it's extremely tricky, I think, for Sky players at this moment on that note, because I know you have to base your decisions in FPL and other fantasy games on limited info, and it's been crazy. But when you have a limited amount of transfers, I think that makes it even harder, because we're all for saving them as we go along, aren't we? And therefore, it's sort of like, do you trust historical results and historical points, or do you trust this craziness for the first 4 weeks? And trying to find that blend is quite hard, I think, because, for example, many of us are going here without Van Dijk in our teams for good reasons. The keeper's injured, he's not been as good. We've got new tackle bonus. We've got loads of good cheap defenders. Come the end of the season, will Van Dijk be the highest scoring defender? Probably.
Yeah, and this is
tricky, isn't it?
And this is why this is quite a tricky time to have an overhaul. Or indeed a wildcard in FPL, but an overall in Sky, because it's come following a crazy week. This is historically a crazy week. Not since 1963 has there been a crazy week like this in the top flight. And so the recency bias could creep in, and you could you could find yourself tripling up in Sky on Aston Villa assets. Meanwhile,
West Ham defenders
every week, Fernandes at 3-4 million more is hammering 2 penalties a week, getting man of the match, and you're wondering, what the hell am I doing? And that's where we have to. I'm trying to temper that recency bias, and so Liverpool just been hammered their defence. There's no way I'm going into this game without Robertson or Van Dijk. One of them is in my side. There's no way Liverpool are going to get hammered like that again, and so on. And this brings me to the shots tier 2. Kane, you would expect there. Dallas, we've already mentioned on 1. Shots tier 2, he's hit it on 1 occasion. Kane twice. Mane has hit it a couple of times. Now, Mane is out, not through injury, because of COVID. And if he comes back and he comes fit, hopefully well, in a week or so, Mane could be an intriguing option and differential to Salah, especially if he's hitting those. So he might be getting some more points. I don't know. These are the things, our recency bias.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, Salah's been fantastic, but when we break it down again for the games, obviously he had 2 penalties game week 1. Yes, penalties are a thing, but, it wasn't, the most amazing. I mean, it was a good goal he scored, and it was a good performance, but 2 penalties is quite lucky. I think everyone has to say that. You're not going to get that every week. No. And then obviously he scored 2 this week, which again, fantastic, but Mane was out. So the 2 other games in between, where they both played, Mane was the better option again. So he just doesn't go away, does he, Mane? No. That's the thing. Doesn't go away.
I am seriously, depending on how Mane is in other formats of this game, I'm considering Mane over Salah, because I'm wondering if Mane is the better player in the fantasy format, and also in Sky as well. If he's hitting shots tier 2 and he is also scoring and assisting, then and it's better than Salah's score, then that's just that little edge, and that could be that little edge that takes you into the top 100, could take you up to winning it. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't hate it
at all. You need an edge.
Don't hate it at all. It's always those. It's just, everyone says it. The penalties just come back and scare me at the moment. That's the only thing. But don't hate that at all. Love him.
No. So in the notes, we were going to go with your team first. So we're going to say, hey, let's have a look at your overhaul team at the moment. But then I posted my one up, and you said, oh no, let's go with that one, because that's. I've stumbled upon the template, which of course you did as well. So you've come up with something a bit different. So let's go with the template first, and then see, I guess, with your team how we can tweak that. So yeah, this is my team that I've come up with. So I'm going for a 3-5-2, and I'm trying for flexibility here, and I'm looking at price points as well, and I'm also thinking about transfers I want to make further down the line. So I'll come to that with the players in a minute. I've got Martinez, Robertson, Lamptey at 6 million, Dallas we've already mentioned, And then I've got De Bruyne, Antonio, Barnes, Fernandes, Rodriguez, and then up front I've got Kane and Salah. There's a few locks in there and there's a few iffy ones, and it's going to take a bit of manoeuvring. I'm currently on 0.0. This is an exact team.
Almost too good to be true, isn't it?
Yes. So yeah, it makes me question that. So okay, De Bruyne might let me down as a captain now and again, but I'm not going into this game without De Bruyne, because we saw against Wolves that when he nailed every single metric you can possibly get for scoring points in this game in one match, which I think you were saying Paul Pogba and Santi Cazorla are the only two recently that have done that.
Possibly ever.
Antonio, a lock. De Bruyne and Antonio are locks. Kane, he's a lock for me over Son at the moment. Salah, he is a lock for me. But as I was saying, I wonder if Mane could be the better option, but I'm waiting on COVID news there. Now, we come to the iffy ones. Okay, pretty much a lock is Fernandes. I'm going to want Fernandes at some point. 10.9, I can't easily go from an 8 million, 7 million midfielder, 6 million defender to Fernandes.
No, but something you can do from Fernandes is go straight to Van Dijk. Yes,
so there is that option as well. So if Liverpool's defence gets much better and I want to double up, Fernandes to Van Dijk, or Van Dijk back to Fernandes. That's a really good point. Rodriguez is cheaper than Calvert-Lewin. I want one of them. I think they are both really good options, and they're both, as we've seen with man of the match. Dallas is a lock. One of Robertson or Van Dijk is a lock. I think if I've got Fernandes, like you were saying, I'm not going to have Van Dijk, because then I can get to Van Dijk. Whereas Robertson just saves me a bit of money there. Lamptey 6 million is the iffy one, because he's not hitting a lot of those tiers that I want him to. I want my cheap guys to show up and just get points for doing their stuff. And then if they get me goals, assists and clean sheets, happy days. But I just want them to do the basics like Dallas is doing. Turning up, here, have 5 points. So Lamptey is a tricky one, but as I said, it's 0.0. So the price.
Well, I think, first of all, if you're going to try and create the perfect team, I think this is as close as you can get, really. I think it's fantastic. It's just, you have to make a sacrifice somewhere, and the only place I can even see a slight sacrifice is, like you say, Lamptey. Now, if we go back to previous seasons, the sacrifices we're making were far, far worse than him. It's still hardly a sacrifice. You've already mentioned there, the concern with him, I suppose, is he's got 3 assists in 4 weeks. Okay. Now, obviously, that's not sustainable. Even the very best assisters in the league, like De Bruyne, are getting an assist in 50% of the games. You get 18, 19 assists last season, something like that. So there's no way that stays up. And then he's still not particularly high in the scoring charts, just as a result of, like you say, not particularly picking up bonus, but also just the amount of minus points they're conceding for goals. So he's a slight concern, I'd say, but he's still a very good enabler who... if Brighton suddenly revert, he's not going to get those assists, but they might start... they're not going to end the season with 0 clean sheets, are they? So he is going to pick up a few. And let's not forget, he actually went off injured. Was it 58th minute or something like that, where he would have picked up a clean sheet if he'd have stayed on the pitch for a little bit longer.
Well, that's the other issue I have. Players like him, St. Maximum, the sort of... I'm doing him an unkindness when I say the headless chicken players, but the players that absolutely run and look attacking and go for it.
Basically, like dribblers who, they sort of knock the ball and then they have to stretch
Pulisic
for it and stuff
as well. Like that. Pulisic, great player, great asset. Gets injured a bit. Lamptey, could he be one? And in Sky, we don't have the luxury of a bench, so this also makes me question him. But I don't like any option below 6 million.
No, there's a few, isn't there? There's Mitchell, there's Jack Robinson for Sheffield United, potentially very cheap. Yeah. But I really like it. The thing I really like about this team is you've only got 2 players from one team in Robertson and Salah. Everyone else plays for a different team, and every single one of those in your team, I would, apart from Lamptey, I would consider captaining any of the other players. Yeah. I would happily put the armband on them. Again, we talked about it. If we get to a Villa match, I'd rather have Grealish as captain, but Martinez might do a job in that game. I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Yeah, so the players that I'm I'm without, so Grealish I would quite like, but I've got Martinez to cover me there. And if I didn't have Barnes, I'm not sure what I would go to with Leicester, and I think I need a Leicester somewhere. Barnes does shoot a lot as well. Nicely,
get shot steers. Yeah, I think he's got it in 3 out of 4 weeks.
Yeah, nicely in this game, what he does is he shoots at the goalkeeper's arms. It's like he's almost like got a pact with the goalkeepers. Hey, I'll just shoot in your arms a lot. So his shots they're not going to result in a lot of goals, but he will get goals. But he will shoot a lot, so he will get points for turning up, which is what you want at that price. Calvert-Lewin instead of Rodriguez isn't a consideration in this team because Calvert-Lewin is more, and I think Rodriguez can do well. Son instead of Kane would free up a lot of money, but for a main team, I don't want to be Kaneless. I've done that before in this game, and he's posting those kind of stats where we started to see him get back-to-back hat-tricks, and I still haunted by that time when I ran out of transfers in the last 4 weeks of the season, and Kane decided to score about 20 goals in about a month.
I loved him for that.
Yeah.
The only thing, I mean, I'm with you on there. Son could be as good as Kane or possibly a better option. But the thing is, you've got the money there to switch to other forwards. That's the thing where when we look at my team in a bit, I've just done it as a tweak on this one, really, because I've already said to you, I may roll with this team, to be honest with you. I really like it. If you go down to someone like a Son, yes, there's some other players around those options, but suddenly you can't get to the likes of Aubameyang. You know, you're not 0.1 off of Aguero. You're not near Vardy if Barnes is injured or out. And that can end up in you losing some transfers later down the line because, I mean, who wants to remove Salah? Most of the time you don't, right? No. So, it's a lot more flexible to have the two expensive forwards up front, and then you can get anyone. I do like that. I
think that's the key with this game that I've learned over the years is the flexibility. So I start looking, especially with Sky with no bench, I start looking about, right, if they get injured, who can I get in? So as you mentioned, Fernandes, if he gets injured, just go for Van Dijk. Van Dijk's been the best player in Sky traditionally. So what a great, he is my number one replacement for him.
Yeah. What do you feel about no Chelsea?
Yeah, well, this is what I was going to come to. So another notable admission there is Pulisic. I am slightly put off with his injury record in Sky, but I do think he's great. None of the defence appeal to me at the moment. They're conceding. Their goalkeeper has just got injured on international duty. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure about them at the moment. But Pulisic would go in the Barnes role, but I can't. But then I would have to downgrade elsewhere. But I think in my B team I do have Pulisic. I managed to do that, and I did that through Son instead of Kane. And that's I think if you've got a Son, not a Kane team, I can't see any reason not to go for Pulisic, because Pulisic's price. Look at the players you can move down to that I've got.
Yeah.
You can move down to any of them, and there's still about 10 other players you can move down to.
Well, Pulisic is giving me nightmares because I started with him in both my teams, and as a result, I had to use a transfer because he featured for 20 minutes over the 4 games. So that really hurt me. But I started with him because he looks like he's, potentially one of the best value picks in the game to me. If he can get back to fitness and play how he was at the back end of last season, then he's fantastic, isn't he? Creates his own chances, etc. Everything. So. Yeah, he's giving me headaches at the moment because I kind of want him, but at the moment it's almost on faith because we've still not seen anything and he's already given me that heartache. So I don't know whether I'll start with him. I might have to wait and see until he's fully back and then have to make the move. But then, of course, you're having to use transfers, aren't you? To then bring him in, and then if he gets injured, you then have to take him out. So you end up using 2 transfers on a Pulisic. So I think it's a head scratcher.
Yeah, I think the strategy, if you think, right, I'm going to want Pulisic in a few weeks or a week or two, is to have money in the bank and have an idea on. I mean, Barnes to him is a bit of a stretch, but that kind of thing. Barnes, Grealish, Rodriguez, someone like that. Someone that you don't mind ditching. You're desperate for Pulisic. You can do it in 1 move, save some money back. But if you start thinking of it in 2 moves, you've only got 40 transfers in Sky, and they soon run out. And you're going to want them towards the end of the season. So, that's the idea of this. I mean, this is real price point stuff.
Just on that note as well, actually, I think it's fairly important to note that who are the teams in Europe? It's Spurs, Arsenal and Leicester, is that right?
That's correct.
So those 3 guys are very likely to play on Sundays more than any other day. So I do think it makes sense to have definitely have one or two of these guys. I mean, right there, you've got Kane and Barnes in your team.
Yeah.
So you'd like to think you're covered there. I think that looks pretty good. So I think as long as you've got two of them, that's good. So whether you choose that to be Son and Aubameyang or even Castagna from Leicester, for example, as your pick, I think it makes sense to have one of the Leicester boys just sneaked in there. And for me, Barnes is the pick at the moment. I do like Castagna. I do like Vardy, obviously. But I think Barnes is probably the way to go at the moment. Yeah. And as for Arsenal, it's hard to go Aubameyang at the moment, right?
No, I don't think you can at the moment. And as you said, on those Monday and Sunday games, because of Europa League commitments, they're usually on a Thursday, aren't they? Those matches. If I've got Kane and a Leicester asset, I'm covered probably. I've been 99% of the time. And if it's Arsenal, it depends who Arsenal are playing. Arsenal could be the Monday night game. If they're not playing one of those other teams that I've got assets from, then I might have to think. But I've got a lot of teams covered already. So
I think they're more likely to put them on Sunday, just because obviously if they're on Monday, then they're closer to Thursday. I don't know if it works exactly like that, but I feel like Sunday is going to be their day most of the time. So as a result, just having like one or two means you've nearly always got a decent Sunday captain. And on that note, I mean, therefore you can look at who's the best captain, and quite often that will be Kane, it will be Vardy, it will be people like that. So there's an argument to go with the likes of Vardy, even if I don't particularly like him. It does kind of make sense in some way.
Well, I have been doing my A and B team before the overhaul. Is one was my A team was Kane, and then in that role was Vardy in the B team. And Vardy's been doing really well for getting the penalties. But when you look at the shots, when you look at the expected goal stats, Vardy's
just say he's jam on toast, isn't it?
Yeah, he's just not there. And I'd prefer to have someone like Barnes who's much cheaper, and have Kane instead. Kane's just the one. Plus, if Kane gets injured, we get Son. If Kane's injured, Son's up front, so I definitely want him.
Nice
flexibility. But let's have a look at your team, because this is because as you said, you sort of independently just came up with this, but then at the same time thought, well, no, for the purposes of the show, let's do something a bit different. So this is the team that you've come up with, which shows some of the differences you can make. You've got Patricio, you've got your Wolves coverage there. You've got a 3-5-2 again with Robertson and Dallas. These are locks, aren't they? Whatever you come up with. Diaz, I'll come to that in a minute. De Bruyne, captain there. Antonio, Barnes, Grealish instead of Fernandes, Rodriguez, Son and Salah. Now the two things that leap out there, apart the positives there of getting Patricio and Grealish, I think are really good, is no Fernandes. And what would be your Fernandes plan when he gets 3 penalties every week and 60% of the game own him and he's getting 20-40 point returns?
Exactly. I mean, that out of all of the things that you were going to throw at me, that's the one I don't really have an answer for. I suppose the answer would be De Bruyne to Fernandes, but which I could do for 1 week, 2. It depends how the fixtures work out. But I don't feel comfortable removing De Bruyne from my team at any point, so I wouldn't want to do that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. At this moment in time, Fernandes, I don't know whether he is an absolute lock for me. He very well likely might end up being there, but I just think Man United, as we know, have been pretty dire so far. Fernandes himself has not actually played very well. I know he scored the penalties, and it's quite a lot of money to spend for that. I mean, in terms of bonus, he hasn't been particularly good either, and that's the thing where I'm coming down to it, like thinking, well, he got 5 points in his first week, which is home to Palace. Now, Palace sit off people incredibly, right? So passes tier 2 in that game, that's all he got. So you would expect that anyway, I think. Then he played against Brighton, who have a bit more of the ball. We're away. He got 1 assist in that, and he ended up getting tackles tier 1. Now, as he's a centre midfielder, he's always going to be in the frame for tackles, as we know, but it's not going to be a regular thing for Bruno Fernandes, that. So really, he got the penalty and he got the assist, which was a bit of a fortuitous assist, if I remember rightly as well. And then against Spurs, obviously they got totally battered and he got his 1 penalty again in the beginning, but then didn't do anything. Now, this is Man United at home to Spurs. I would have hoped in that game he would have got passes. It didn't work out that way because obviously they got battered 6-1, but you would have thought, well, at least he gets tackled. Then he got subbed at half-time, didn't he? So I can't really rate how much can you sort of look into that. So my honest answer is I probably will have to get him in at some point. How he's been so good, but I think right now there is a small sort of segue to not have him. However, the fixtures are still pretty good, and
I was
I'm
going to
not
say,
sure.
I think I've just thought of a way, a way you can get him, but give you more choice to get him. So at the moment, it's basically De Bruyne to him. But if you didn't have, if I don't know how much money you've got in the bank for this one, but
0.3.
0.3. If you went Calvert-Lewin instead of Rodriguez in this one, and or whoever, Callum Wilson, whatever, or Mbappe, a cheaper striker, and you went 3-4-3, then you can move one of your strikers, Salah perhaps, Son, to, if you've got some money in the bank, to Fernandes. So it just opens up routes to Fernandes.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you had 4 at the back and you had Van Dijk there instead of Robertson, then you could remove Van Dijk for Fernandes. So that's another option.
This is the thing about this team. I think man to a man, if we look at it compared to your team, right, the only players that are different is you've got Martinez, I've got Patricio. Now, I don't even know who's going to end up the highest scorer there, but I'd like to think it would be Patricio. I think I'm paying more money to get more out of that.
Yeah.
Okay, Diaz, which is by no means a lock. I mean, that is very much on historical data. If this guy's nailed and playing for Man City, not only I know Man City's defence is very questionable at the moment, but season on season, Man City are in the top 2 for clean sheets every year. Yeah. I mean, they were 17, I think, from last season. I think it was something like that. So I have no doubts that City will be up there again. And suddenly you start thinking of Otamendi and Laporte and players like that. And that's an incredibly cheap price because Diaz will have tier 2 passing by half time in some games.
Okay. So how much is Diaz again?
He's 9.1.
See that? So essentially what you're saying is mini Van Dijk, Laporte version 2.1.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't get passes versus Leeds is the worry, but no one did. I mean, that was just an anomaly of a game, I think. The other thing that I like about the fact he's 9.1, if you have a different setup, a different formation, Pulisic is also 9.1, so you could switch between Diaz and Pulisic. I kind of like that as well. Obviously can't in the 3-5-2 at the moment, but it's something to think about.
I look at this, and I actually like this, but I like it if it was a 3... If it was different, no. If it was a 3-4-3, if it was 3-4-3,
it's got no flexibility. That's its main issue.
It's got no flexibility. But with a 3-4-3, you have sudden flexibility. You can, or 4-4-2, because you can move that defender around to the midfield. You can start thinking about those possibilities. So I think those that are watching and listening, and they're wanting to know, how are we going to get Pulisic in? How are we going to get Fernandes in? Don't want them at the start, but I'm probably going to want them. Well, start having a think about having 4 in midfield, 3 up top, or 4 at the back, 4-4-2. Then suddenly you can move into midfield. You can make that swap, and that Van Dijk and Fernandes price point is amazing, and really flexible.
I like it a lot, and I mean, I suppose the team I've created here is kind of a combination of the Sky overhaul that we've got at the moment and the kind of form. Grealish is obviously fire right now, fire for England last night. Will he continue to perform at that rate? Possibly not, but right now I feel like Grealish might be a better pick than Bruno Fernandes. That's kind of my thinking there. It doesn't help you with the flexibility, but right now I think it's better. So again, going back to the players that we've actually got different, I've got Son over your Kane. I've already said that they're within 1 point of each other. So I don't think there's particularly anything bad about that. I've got Grealish over your Fernandes, which again at the moment you could argue they're quite close.
Yeah.
And then you look at the defence where you've got Lamptey, which is your big concern. And I have Diaz instead of your and I have Patricio over Mark. Yeah, exactly. So I've made a sacrifice in my attack to get a better defence that I feel is better over a longer period. However, it doesn't have the flexibility, whereas yours does, and that's the worry. That means I'll probably end up changing this and reverting closer to what your team is like.
We're trying to focus on our A teams more instead of confusing people with our B teams. But I will just mention the players in my B team. I'm not going to put a picture up just to confuse people. But my B team is looking. So people look to do something a bit different with their B team. So I've gone for the alternatives for each position. So I've gone for a 3-4-3. Because I'm not sure of the players. So the 3-4-3 gives me that flexibility, I think. I think that's the best one if you're not sure. So I've gone for Darlow in goal for Newcastle. I may want a Newcastle player at some point, and I don't know which one I want. And
him and Guita are very good, I think.
Darlow and Guita, yeah. These are the goalkeepers you put in for those single match days, and they can get you good returns. I've got Robertson. I've got Konsa for Aston Villa.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
In defence, I think he is quite good. He's got an absolutely massive neck in his picture for Sky. So I do urge people just to put him in your team, just so you can see this Gigantosaurus neck he's got. Dallas is a lock, even in the B team. I've got De Bruyne and Antonio. They're locks. I can't even if I was trying to be Maverick, or I couldn't. But then I've got Pulisic and Fernandes. So what I've done is I've gone for... I'm probably going to want these guys at some point. Just get them in there. Because what you said is I can move Pulisic down to a defender. Fernandes, I can move him to Van Dijk. I can move either of them to any number of Grealish, Barnes, etc. There's so much flexibility getting Pulisic and Fernandes in from the off. And if you're wrong, you can move away from them, run away from them. But running to them is quite tricky. Up front, I've got Son instead of Kane. I've got Calvert-Lewin. So I've used a bit of that money to get splash out on Calvert-Lewin over Rodriguez. And then I've got Salah, who, indeed, in this team, I might change to Mane if he's fit. So I just wanted to highlight that as some of the alternatives to get. And if you really want Fernandes and Pulisic, just get them in. Because, I mean, I've done it in my B team, so I expect cop out. I should get them in my A team if I really want them. But, you know, they're there.
I've done similar. I mean, I've got Pulisic in my B team. I've got Calvert-Lewin in my B team. I've got these are basically other names that I'm still considering for the A team, and I'd love to fit them in. It's just very tough to have them all. I mean, that striker slot we've already said of Maupay. There's always a cheap striker in Sky that does very well.
Yeah.
I think last season Ings was cheap. He did very well throughout the whole season. Jimenez the season before that was fantastic, very cheap as well. And there'll be another one. There's a lot around that price. I mean, Watkins, Maupay, Mitrovic are all around the same thing, and Bamford. You know, and then you go just slightly up to Calvert-Lewin. I mean, it's so tricky, that Calvert-Lewin. I think we've got a question on it. As to whether you have him or not. And it's a debate. He's in my B team. I might have to try and put him in my A team.
Well, let's come on to some of those questions. I'll do the first one. Fish FPL asks, Kane or Son or both? I think we said have one. I'm doing Kane in A team, Son in B team. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, money no object. I go Kane for the penalties, essentially. That for me. But I think both are viable, and that's very much a toss of a coin at the moment. I know they've both got quite bad injury records overall. I mean, Son's already been injured once this season, in inverted commas. So there is that thought process. I don't mind going with both. It just means that you end up having to.
I wouldn't.
Spend a transfer later on, probably, because
I would not want both, even though they are both the top goal scorers. But I don't think that's sustainable. They're both they're both point scorers. I don't think that's sustainable. And then there are so many other options. So you have got Salah there.
You're just taking a captain option away from yourself.
And you've got Calvert-Lewin, and say Aubameyang starts firing, and Arsenal have a great set of fixtures. Yeah, it's just you're leaving yourself very inflexible. So I personally wouldn't go for both.
Yeah, also, I mean, one Gameweek 1 showing where they blank and play rubbish against Everton again, and suddenly you're sitting there questioning your life, aren't you?
Spurs, they were awful to watch. They were classic Mourinho. I mean, he's got a better side now. I mean, we haven't seen what impact Bale was going to have.
That's the other point, isn't it? If Bale comes in and is suddenly ridiculously good and taking man of the matches, or just messes the balance up, we just don't know yet. So
Bale is man of the match. He's going to be man of the match, and I say that not to be facetious. He is going to be man of the match as soon as he steps on that pitch. Whoever makes man of the match in Sky will make him man of the match, unless for some reason he just faints after a minute. So basically, all he has to do is show up, and he's man of the match. Benny Blanco asks, with Alisson's injury, do we consider going without Sky Fantasy Football Lord Van Dijk in our overhaul team? Well, I think that's what I was thinking about, recency bias. Alisson's not going to be injured for that long, and he may not even be injured at all when we get back. So I think a Liverpool defender, but not necessarily Van Dijk. Robertson, I think, would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to going with none. I've seen quite a lot of people with none just because they are a lot of money, and if they're not getting the clean sheets, then you could question whether they're worth it. So I do think that's well. But he's asking the wrong person there because I didn't start with Van Dijk,
No.
and Robertson outscored Van Dijk.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, and
So
and also in my team with Fernandes in, I can always go to Van Dijk there if I'm that desperate for Van Dijk. But Robertson at the moment, yeah, it's the absolute one. More than Trent Alexander-Arnold.
yeah, I don't question once we start settling into things and come game week 38, the Van Dijk will be. I mean, I still hold hope that Robertson could maybe outscore him. I still think he might, but Van Dijk will be top 2, won't he? I mean, unless there's injuries or something has gone catastrophically wrong, he should be top 2 come the end of the season. So he's still a very viable pick. But the reason why Van Dijk's so good is he's just so consistent over games, and he turns up, and as we know, he can often get he can get explosive hauls, but he's getting those 5 to 10 points every week. So in short periods, I feel like you can get away with him for a little while. And right now, it doesn't look like a good time to go to Liverpool. So just have him in the back of your mind, and once Alisson's back and they start getting a clean sheet or 2, then you just have to sort it out and get him in, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think with all the players that you want, think how you could get them with whatever setup you've got. Close says, is it worth avoiding loading up on premium defenders to spend elsewhere? Well, I mean your setup has spent more in defence than I have in mine, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all, because in this game defenders can score just as well as their equivalent price points in midfield.
Yeah. When he's talking premium, I mean, I'm going to assume he means the very, very top end.
Right.
And right now, I'd say that it's better to not go with those guys. Yeah, just because we've got so many cheap, viable ones, and clean sheets seem to be, even though the total amount of clean sheets is very similar, they seem to be less predictable. And yeah, I think it's more just to do with the tackle bonus is easier to obtain now, it seems. Yeah. And we've got, for the first time ever, I mean, I can't remember any season where we've had defenders between the sort of 6 and 7 million or 6 and 8 million rank, where so many of them I actually quite like. Yeah. Whereas previously we've usually got a dearth of options there. I mean, Diaz, I wouldn't even say is premium at 9.1. But on that team, by the way, I just want to quickly note the Diaz and Son thing. I can change that to a 7.8 defender instead of Diaz and go to Kane up top.
Oh, okay.
And that's the other option I'm thinking of. At 7.8, I do quite like Zuma. Have you thought about Zuma?
Yeah, I thought about Zuma. I'm just staying for. Apart, and we know about Pulisic, but I'm staying a little bit clear of Chelsea defence at the moment. I'm really not sure how they're going to go. And we saw, we've spoken before about Reece James.
Same price as well, 7.8 as Zuma.
Hits those tiers. Always looks good on the eye. Potential man of the match, and then Son show up, and then he's benched. I don't know with their defence, so.
Yeah,
and
that's the worry with Zuma as well. He gets passes tier 2. He's obviously can score a few goals. That's not going to happen. It's more about the passes. Chelsea last season were very good for passes before as well. We just never knew who was going to play.
So Christensen and Silva could be the defensive part. We don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the worry.
Matt asks, who is the best 8.5 mid or forward? I'm going to quickly say Antonio because there isn't. He is the best. Is there a better?
I'm going to agree. I'm going to say Antonio, but if you're looking at forwards, I think Morpie 8.5 million is still worth a look. Penalties, shots all the time. So we've already mentioned him a lot. But Barnes 8.2 as well. Shout out to him. He could easily. I mean, if he could have an Antonio. See, if he can just work on his end products, there is an extremely good player.
Look, I mean, I've kept your team up on the screen. Because quite lucky because you just showcased them. Who is the best sort of sub 8.5 mid? Don't think 8.5 is this magical cutoff. Think 8-9 million ish, and you got them all: Antonio, Barnes, Grealish, Rodriguez. There you go. Pick them all if you can. Yeah,
Grealish right now is just absolute fire, isn't he? So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, agree. Sam asks, James Rodriguez or Calvert-Lewin. Now, this depends on budget. I think they're both good options.
Let's say they're the same price, Joe. Who do you go for?
I would still go for Rodriguez because I still think there's always going to be 3 strikers that I want.
And therein lies the answer that most Sky managers have come to.
And I have an option in with West Ham. I do not have a striker I want in West Ham, but I have a midfielder in Antonio. In Everton, I have a striker and a midfielder I want. And as you said, therein lies the answer. Calvert-Lewin locks me out of other choices, whereas you've got 5 choices in midfield, or 4,
Yeah,
depending on your setup.
I'm with that. I think. I mean, if you're in a situation like my team where it's a 3-5-2, and you're like, okay, I could change Rodriguez to Calvert-Lewin if I had the money spare. I might do that. He's picked up shots tier in, I think, 3 of the 4, maybe 4 of the 4. But it's only shots tier 1, if I remember rightly, apart from his hat-trick game, obviously. I'm not saying he's not a good option at all. I think everyone will say they really think he's a great option and then they'd love to have him. But when James Rodriguez is the midfielder and you can cover it that way, it just feels kind of like it's right because, like you said, there's just too many other strikers. And that could easily come back to bite us. It could be that we move forward and James Rodriguez, those are 2 worldy performances and he reverts to a series of 2s. Let's say he gets 2 points in the next 3 games or something and Calvert-Lewin keeps scoring braces. It's a situation that could happen. And I suppose in that case, for me, with the 3-5-2 that I've got at the moment, I'd have to find 0.5 and swap him to Calvert-Lewin and go and move the 3 up front. I don't want to have to do that.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, like you, I've stuck him in the old B team, the old faithful. I can claim I've still got him, but he's not really in the A team.
No.
Yeah. So James for me as well.
And I think so. Yeah, it's that $500,000 difference. But you can move from if you're going with Calvert-Lewin over Rodriguez, and you decide you want Rodriguez instead, you can move from Calvert-Lewin down to him because it's quite that's an easy move depending on your setup. So if you haven't got 5 already in midfield. Hornet asks thoughts on Goalkeeper. So
another really tricky one,
and that's really tricky because they're so kindly priced in this game. As I said, in my B team, I've got Darlow, and I think that's a reasonable way to go. Not necessarily Darlow, but just think of teams where you don't want any of their outfield players, like Palace, and then Guita could do you a job there. For me, I can't look past Martinez, and if Dallas wasn't so amazing, I would go for the Leeds goalkeeper because he's 6.1.
I think those are I think the ones you've just said there. If I was to name a four keepers, actually, like it's Messier 6.1, Martinez 6.3, probably Guita next at 6.6, and then Patricio 6.9 for that extra money. Now there will be other options there. I mean, Pope's still there, 6.7. If they suddenly turn good again, he's still an option. Even Mendy is 7 million. It's only 0.1 more than Patricio. So if you think that Chelsea eventually sort themselves out, will they get more clean sheets than Wolves? And I don't know, but he could be an option at 7 million. That's quite cheap for the top end. You expect Chelsea to finish in the top 4. So yeah, kind of like that. But ultimately, I think I may change Patricia and just go for like a Messier at 6.1 because it just offers you that extra money. There's no doubt that at some point during the season, I'm going to wish I had less money in my goalkeeper so I could afford a player further down the line. Like, let's say Barnes gets injured, right, for me, and I've already got Grealish and Antonio. It's suddenly like, I don't really know who I want to get. And then, I don't know, say Diaz, say I haven't got him, he's 9.1, a little bit more, and I want to switch, and I think, where am I going to get my money from? You always look at that goalkeeper and think, if I had the cheaper option in goal that's doing just as well as the other ones, it would be better. So part of me does just want to go really, really cheap in goal. We've seen it before in Sky where the likes of Fabianski and other goalkeepers in the past that have been incredibly cheap have just done very, very well. Michel Vaughan was one for Swansea as well, was absolutely ridiculous one season. So I think if you really can't decide, then probably going cheaper is the answer, I think.
I always think, just think unfashionable. Just do not go with fashion. Do not go with I'm not interested in the likes of Edison, etc. And Alisson.
Well, I think Edison and Alisson will probably be the top scoring goalkeepers, but value-wise, I'm not sure that they'll be worth it. Yeah.
This season, last season, we lamented the lack of midfielders. This season, I want 20 midfield spots for all the players I want. Ollie Paul asked some questions here, and these are quite good ones. So, is Dallas and Ayling viable? So Dallas and Ayling. Yeah, definitely. If you haven't got the Leeds goalkeeper, Ayling is getting bonus as well. Dallas is the one I would go for because he's cheaper and so far better in this game. But I don't see a problem with that, actually.
No, I've looked at teams with that. I don't hate that at all. Obviously, again, in the past, we've had these blanket defences. I can think of having triple Watford at one point in Sky, and it has worked out. So yeah, I do like that. I mean, let's be let's be fair, actually, to Ayling. If Dallas wasn't 6.5, if he wasn't in the game or he's around the similar price, we'd see Ayling in a lot more teams, a lot more, definitely. Because he's great pick at that price. So doubling up, I do not have an issue with that at all.
No. Ollie also asked, will we go without Chelsea players from the off? For me, that's B team. B team, go for the off. A team.
Yeah,
no, I'm
I'm still debating this. It's Pulisic, or for me, maybe Zuma. I already talked about that Diaz and Son to Kane and Zuma, which is the exact same price. And that gives me a Chelsea captain then instead. Because obviously I've already got De Bruyne, who's...
Yeah.
But then I think, do I want to captain Zuma? I mean, it's a scary prospect when, they could easily get battered the way their defence is. And also, if you could tell me he was going to play every game, I'd have Zuma in my team. Yeah. I definitely would have him because he gets passing bonus. Yeah. He's got a goal threat. But I just don't know he's going to play.
Before the fixtures started and I saw Azpilicueta's price, I thought, right, he's in my post-overall team. Azpilicueta, nailed on. Absolutely brilliant for bonus. 9 million-ish. Great. And then he's clearly competing with James. And it's not even competing. It's more probably tactical to do with each different opposition they're against as well.
Yeah, which you can't even work out because he did it strangely. He had like Azpilicueta versus Palace and then had like James versus Liverpool and stuff. I know
it makes no sense to me. And where things that make no sense in a game with 11 players, no bench, I don't want to know. And
like he also say, if Reece James was nailed, you'd have him all day, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, definitely, because we've spoken about him on the bonus. He's just a machine, but if he's not on the pitch, you can't get any points. So,
good point.
Ollie Paul also asks, final one from Ollie. Who is the least essential? I like this one. Out of Van Dijk, Robbo. So he's basically saying a Liverpool defender, KDB or Bruno. Ooh, least. I mean,
I say Bruno.
I would say so as well. I would say
followed by Van Dijk,
KDB, and a Liverpool defender. Other players who are new to Sky, who've been used to FPL, and they're looking at their FPL sides and thinking, they got me minus points, and I can't get a clean sheet out of them. Sky's completely different. Van Dijk gets points coming out of his ears just for showing up, and Robertson is at the moment as well. So you can't ignore that.
I'd put De Bruyne 1, Robertson 2, Van Dijk 3, Fernandes 4. That's what I'd say at the moment.
Yeah. This is a question we've already answered really. FPL Lad, is there space for Calvert-Lewin given the array of forwards? For me, no. And I think that was with you as well because Rodriguez is there and he's cheaper.
Yeah, I do worry that that's us being shrewd and being tactical and all that stuff. And in the end, Calvert-Lewin's sheer volume of goals is going to force us to do things.
This is where, for those that play Sky and FPL, it's inevitable you're going to do a bit of hedging. I've got Calvert-Lewin in my FPL side, so I'm not going to cry when he starts hammering them in. Jack Ladbrook asked, Pulisic... Oh, no, he's like down to his final decision by the looks of it, and he's worked out his budget. He could get Pulisic and Kane or Bruno and Son. Now, we don't usually do these type of questions, but yeah. Pulisic and Kane would be my instinct there but it depends on other players. And as we've mentioned as well, Bruno and Van Dijk are similar price. Imagine Van Dijk is a holding player for Fernandes, but you end up keeping him for the rest of the season anyway. That's perfect. Perfect for Sky. Saves your transfer as well. Lots and lots of questions there. Sorry we didn't get a chance to read out everyone's questions, but hopefully we've given lots of food for thought for the overhaul. Now we're going to be back next week where we're going to look at the next game week. We're in that weird cycle now in Sky where it's not going to be game week 5, it's going to be game week 6 because they count the fact we're not having fixtures this week as game week 5.
Yeah, they need to sort that out. It's so confusing.
I'm really enjoying game week 5, which is non-existent. So it'll be game week 6 next time, and then we'll better reveal our captains where we're at with our overhaul side. But just before we go, just want to mention the members area at Fantasy Football Scout. Obviously, a lot of the stats. If you're looking for those underlying stats of those that are about to perhaps get the bonus tiers and are not being picked up at the moment in the stats, looking at passing, tackling, those types of things, you can look in the members area there. We've got all that kind of information. The comparison tool and all these kinds of things, all those kinds of shots as well. And one of the things I picked up at the moment, that everyone has picked up, is that Kane is back to superhuman underlying stats levels. Absolutely insane amount of shots, virtually all on target, virtually all in the box. This is what the Kane you want. You don't want, Kane being a defensive midfielder with doing nothing. We're seeing Kane of old. So that's a little intriguing thing. But for now, Luke, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with the rest of your overall team. See you next week.
See you, Joe. Yeah, I'll catch up next time, and let's hope for the first time in many weeks our overall A team outscores the B team, because that would be nice.
Once a season, please. Goodbye.
See you guys.